Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is Roger Knecht, President of Universal Accounting Center, and this podcast is dedicated to helping you as an accounting professional, in fact, build the premier accounting firm, offering quality accounting services and doing so with confidence. Now, one of the things that I'd like to emphasize is that this podcast is meant to actually address a variety of topics that you as the owner may be facing. They range from things related to marketing, selling, onboarding clients, taking care of clients, retaining clients, obviously offering quality accounting services, and doing this by hearing from the experts, different individuals each and every week as to what it is they would like to share with us as to best practices that we can implement in our companies. Now, as a podcast, one of the things that I'd like to also point out is if you've not already, subscribe to the podcast and listen to our other episodes and see what it is you can do to apply these principles in your business. Now, today we have a great guest, someone I've been looking forward to having on the show. It is Chandler Walker, and he's going to be somewhat of a different character simply because he started his entrepreneurial journey after graduating from the University of Nevada, Reno with a degree in biochemistry, but foregoing that and a medical pathway to pursue a brick and mortar wellness facility. Now, this is kind of interesting because he then pivoted to an online health practice a year before COVID lockdowns. Now, after scaling both businesses to a seven-figure level and doing more than 3,000 to 4,000 in sales with consultations, Chandler was frustrated with the way sales were taught. He was tired of the old school sales objection handling, aggressive tactics, and the salesy attitude taught by most sales trainers. So he looked back at what he was doing, combined those with his notes, and created Compassion Conversation. Now, Compassion Conversations is a therapeutic-driven, psychologically based sales system centered around compassion and care. Chandler has taught this to over 3,000 people, his system of Compassion Conversations, and has a goal to change and redefine the landscape of sales altogether. Chandler also invites his guests regularly to do a variety of things. One of the things that he does is he invests regularly in crypto markets and bought Ethereum when it was only $15, obtaining a 20,000% increase and turning $250 into 50,000s. I'd be curious what that is worth today. So with that, Chandler, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to jump on today and talk sales, talk how you don't have to be icky and gross, and how you can run your business and also feel aligned with your processes.
You know, I really appreciate this because this is going to resonate with a lot of my listeners. Now, before we jump into it, just to give it some context, let me mention this, Chandler, that as accounting businesses, one of the terms that many of my listeners are familiar with is the idea of mapping the business. It's where we basically look at the organization and see where the biggest challenge or opportunity lies. Is it, first of all, when mapping the business in M, which is marketing and sales, getting more clients? Is it in A, which is offering more quality, valuable services to get paid what we're worth? Or is it P, in production, where we're actually looking at working efficiently and productively to basically get paid what we're worth through the profits that we're able to generate? Well, today's discussion is definitely going to revolve around growing the business, marketing and selling. And so with that context, let me just ask, you started a business, you did very well. What was it that was so icky about sales that was so frustrating before you started all of this? What was it that you disliked about it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I didn't like about sales was I started this wellness business after foregoing a medical school pathway, and my goal was to get people well in 6 areas. So mental health, social health, sleep, nutrition, fitness, habits. But then I found as I was selling this product, it was a higher end product. So in the beginning, it was like $1,500 to start with us. It ultimately ended up being over $3,000 for a consumer-based product for health. And I had to learn how to sell something at a higher level. And so I started hiring coaches. But the common philosophy was you need to stick them with the knife and twist it. You need to be aggressive. You need to force them to make a decision. If they don't buy today, they're never going to buy again. And then the whole thing was centered around like if they cry, they buy. And for me, I'm a people pleaser. I like people. I like being friendly with people. And that was everything against who I am as a person. And so that's really what put me in a place to where I said to myself, I'd rather shut this whole thing down than manipulate people and be gross and just attack people and be aggressive to try to force these decisions.
So what you're describing, I think a lot of the people can relate to. I remember years and years ago when I first thought sales was sleazy. And at the same time, I didn't want to be equated with it. So even though I was in a sales position, my job was to generate revenue, I just couldn't bring myself to refer to myself, introduce myself as a salesperson. And so this is something I can relate to from years ago. Obviously, that's no longer the case, but here's something that a lot of the listeners can identify with. But what did you do about it?
Yeah, so here's the fun part. I tend to be quite obsessive about things, and if I can't figure it out, I'll figure it out. And I think that came from the science background I had, because it's about testing a hypothesis, failing, retesting, adjusting, and just kind of never settling. And so what I did was I looked at the mental health curriculum that we had established for the wellness business and the social health curriculum. And both of those were a combination of cognitive behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, acceptance and commitment therapy, and some trauma and recovery ideas. And I took all of that and I said, okay, well, instead of using this like watered down NLP structure in sales that most people use, I can take real cognitive psychology and install this to create a psychotherapeutic or compassionate conversation with another human being to help them recognize their truth.
So you're taking a lot of those technical things, you're putting them into practical application, but you're creating your own like sales system, sales cycle that you're introducing to sales people to apply. So what was unique about your system that you felt you had tried and proven that was worth taking to other people?
Yeah, so the biggest things that were unique in what we did was, number one, there was basically three steps to it. The first step was we created a model of detachment. And when you think about the way people operate is if you want the sale really bad, if you're asking for the sale, the other person's going to run away. Think about dating. If you meet someone new and all you do is text them and you won't leave them alone, they're going to say you're needy and they're going to run away. And so the first thing we had to do was look at the psychodynamics of the human relationship and move us away from, I need to close this person today, and move into, if I detach from this and figure out if I can actually help this person and create a solidified relationship to where I create the know, like, and trust factor and remove fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I'm going to get a lot more yeses than if I was aggressive and attached to the sale.
I really like this. One of the things that I've found in teaching sales myself is this whole detachment that you're referring to is critical. If it's a win-lose type proposition that one of us has got to win and one of us has got to lose, I think we're not really obtaining the true potential of what we're able to do. So your detachment thought really applies, because one of the things that I've introduced is the idea of, let's just take the issue at hand, the pain that the person's experiencing or the opportunity they're trying to accomplish. Let's both focus on it, and both together as grown, very accomplished, successful adults collaborate and figure out how we're going to achieve that opportunity or remove that pain. In other words, we're both on the same team. A win is resolving the situation, not one of us conceding and doing what the other one wants. So I like this whole detachment thing. So how can someone sell without feeling gross about it then? I mean, this can have an icky element. You're twisting someone, manipulating them to do something they maybe don't want to do. How do we remove that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this comes into our second concept, which is what I call achieving level 5 listening. And when you think about the levels of listening, level 0 is basically where you're talking and I'm just staring at the pictures behind me and literally not paying attention to anything you're saying, just completely ignoring you. The second level is when I'm on my phone, or so I don't have my phone in front of me, but if I have a phone and I'm on Instagram and you're talking, and I'm like, yeah, yep, totally, that makes sense. Just pretending to listen to you, not really paying attention, have no care in the world of what you're saying because I'm doing something else. Level 3 is where most people sit. And level 3, you can think about it this way. Say I'm talking right now and all you can think about is what you're going to say next. That's level 3. You're not really engaged in the conversation. You don't really care what I say. You really mostly just care about your response. And I think that's where a lot of people sit, not because they don't care, but it's because they're trying to figure out what to say next and they panic. Then level 4 is basically I'm engaged in the conversation. You and I are going back and forth. We're talking, but I'm still kind of stuck inside my own ego. I'm still looking at it from my viewpoint. I'm still putting my model of the world and my needs into your world. Then when we move into level 5, what that is it's where I can step out of my own ego, when I can ask questions and I try to understand your viewpoint, your model of the world, how you grew up, why you grew up that way, what led you to believe what you believe today, remove my thoughts and philosophies from it, and ultimately work to understand and create a connection of who you are today, who you've been, triggers and things that have happened along the way. And all of that helps me develop and understand what the perceived pain is and move into what the actual real situation is.
These scales that you've introduced of the 5 levels, I love them. I haven't heard the 5 scales as you've described them, but I'm going to give it some context to how it sounds familiar. One is Stephen Covey. He talks about seek first to understand, before being understood.
Yes.
It's on that concept of no one cares how much you love until they know how much you are no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's that curiosity. If we can bring genuine curiosity to the conversation, it elevates us to this level 5 that you're speaking of, because I want the backstory. I want to know the whys behind it all. And if I can get the person to open up and become vulnerable and share with us some of the challenges and frustrations associated with the decisions they're trying to make, we can peel back that layer and find out a little bit more of what's probably motivating the situation. But the other thing that I also remember from communication study is the distinct difference between speaking at someone versus speaking with someone. At is, like you were describing, the individual is thinking of what they're going to say next while the other person's speaking. They're not paying attention. But if you're actually speaking with someone, you'll actually give validation. I want you to hear, I heard you. But on top of the validation, I want to go deeper and I want to ask, well, that's interesting. Why do you say that? Or help me understand a little bit better why you meant that. And all of a sudden, before I'm even getting into that next topic or sharing my thoughts, I'm going deeper and deeper into what's going on here. That actually will diffuse an individual and help them not feel as if they're having to be on the defensive because they have to validate their position because they're not understood. They are understood. They're more relaxed. They feel it's a collaborative conversation. And now you're speaking with the individual. How's that sounding so far?
I think that's perfect because that's ultimately what we want. And we want this person to feel like we care. We want this person to feel like we're connecting with them. We want this person to tell us things they probably haven't told anyone before. And so we move away from this idea of speaking at someone like, hey, boom, 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 into, hold on, can you tell me a little bit more about that? What do you mean by that? And I call this concept the smart dummy, because what you're doing is I'm telling them, hey, I'm not very smart. Can you please help me understand and really kind of figure out what's going on here? Oh, I don't know. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or hold on, that makes sense, but I think I just need a little bit more info. So that way they're like, okay, Chandler, he's not very good at sales. He's a little bit of a dummy. I can trust him. And that's ultimately kind of where I want to be.
I like that. I refer to it as being curious. If you can just be genuinely curious and interested, it does take away a lot of that ego that may come across and appear as if you're just trying to strong arm someone. No, I'm just curious and I'm willing to learn as well, because obviously I'm open-minded at this point. So that's really good. So what's the number one thing you can do right now to be better at sales? If I'm not a salesperson, I don't consider myself a salesperson, and yet I'm wanting to improve my likelihood of getting sales. What's one of the things I could do to just be better?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is take the pressure off yourself. Everybody puts pressure on themselves to have this like magical sales script and to have these like magical objection handling techniques. Just remove all of that and just start asking questions. Just be genuinely curious. Step out of your adult state, because we have these different character states, and step into the child state. And the child state is just genuinely curious and just be curious to a fault almost. Someone asks a question and it's not why, because sometimes people would get annoyed by that with a kid, like, why is the sky blue? Well, because of the atmosphere. Why? What's the atmosphere? Well, why? So you want to move into asking specific questions like, hey, I want this. Okay, well, what makes this make sense to you? Why do you think you'd even need this? Hold on, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And really move into this philosophy of just being genuinely curious throughout the conversation, because someone's going to move from this person's just trying to sell me, I can smell that commission breath, to they've asked a lot of good questions. I've never thought about things this way. Maybe what they're saying is actually true. Maybe it's not this that I need. Maybe it's this over here. You create self-actualization and self-realization moments amongst human beings, which are powerful, because if I tell them, like, you need this, they're going to doubt it because they're going to think I'm trying to sell them. But if they tell themselves and they begin to believe that themselves, that's when it becomes true.
So what I'm hearing you say is validate and then be curious. Validate and be curious. And the part of the validation is quite critical, I believe. It's allowing the person that's speaking to hear that they were understood. And I like being able to say, I've heard that before, or, that's interesting. That's new. I've never heard that mentioned, and restating what it is that said, validating, and then having the curiosity, the willingness that before you state your thoughts, your ideas, and be now the one dominating the conversation, you rather now just ask for more information. How did you come to that conclusion? Why is that so important to you? That's interesting. Where did you hear that before? And you just start being curious. And it's I think a very healthy curiosity like you were describing. So that's really good. So you were earlier explaining how you went from one price point to a higher price point. And sometimes that can be a challenge. Some people see that their product or service is worth a certain dollar amount, but then they all of a sudden realize with inflation, with cost of goods going up, with just the fact that they're just not making ends meet, they need to raise their services. Or in fact, they know their services are worth more. They've been lowballing them initially. Now's the time to really step it up and ask what they are deserving of or worth. How do you go into high ticket sales? There is a different element to that. What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you have to look at with high ticket sales is it's not about what you can offer. And that might sound weird, but it's not about saying, "Hey, I'll give you this package that includes 475,000 different things." You get the moneymaker, you get the kitchen sink, you get a box of cookies, you get the lawn dart out there, you get the flamingo. It's not about the sort of philosophy where you sell a million different things. High ticket selling is more about moving into a place where you're selling based on exactly what they need, nothing more, nothing less. If you give them too much, they're going to want to think about it. If you don't give them enough, it's not what solves their problem. And that's why we want to ask such good questions. And so what really makes someone capable of selling high ticket is saying, okay, well, because you said this, what we're going to do is this over here. Because you said that, what we'll do is this over here. Even if your package includes more things, just give them exactly what they need. And then they're going to reference what you said and say, okay, that's literally what I said. That's what I need. Let's do this. So it's less of a sort of a logical fallacy of, hey, here's 700 things and more. Here's exactly what you need and here's why you need it.
One of the things that I liked about your explanation there is it might come with the lawn darts and the flamingo on the front lawn. It may come with all those, but if the customer's not interested in them, we don't need to dwell or harp on it. Now, you still may give them the lawn darts and the flamingo because working with all of your customers, later on, they'll appreciate and value and see the need in it, so they still get it. But you do want to emphasize what matters most to meeting the need that they have as to why they came to you. The thing I'd add about high ticket sales is I think the term is relative. High ticket to whom? To you, exactly. The person that's raising the price. It's possible that they're looking at other services and they're phenomenally more expensive than what you're asking. If you go to buy a car, for example, I can go buy a car for $20,000. I can go buy a car for $3 million. So the person buying the car that's a $250,000 car, is that a high ticket item? When they've got friends and associates that are driving around Bugattis and Rolls Royces, and they're just trying to drive around a Lamborghini. The Lamborghini at $250,000 sounds reasonable. So you've got to put high ticket, I think, into context because the consumer is obviously trying to make a decision, and it's relative to the value of the product or value to the service that you're providing.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And another thing that I think a lot of business owners and service providers fall into is they start thinking with their own wallet. Why would someone charge this much? How would someone charge this much? I would never buy this much. But you have to step out of your own ego. And this is kind of like level 5 listening, and step out of your own mindset and say, okay, who is the market I'm talking to? These people are in this perceived amount of pain. And when you look at it, in the way people will move and react to pain is they'll do anything to get out of pain if they believe that you can solve this. I've taken wellness services in weight loss. Weight loss is like a $27 a month product or something typically, and we sell it for over $3,000 and people buy it happily. And this isn't just like wealthy, ultra rich people. Average people buy this product because they believe what we're doing is going to solve their problem to a level to where they know this is going to be the last thing that they do. And I think saying that, we also have to be very particular in the fact that we need to be able to solve those problems. We don't want people to pay a bunch of money and not get the results. So we need to be advocates in our own ability to create success.
I loved how you shared at the beginning of that oftentimes we project ourselves onto our customers. When you're a business that's running, say, $1 million business and you're selling a product or service to a company that is a $10 million business, what might be costly to you is inexpensive to them. And the easier way I would explain it is as a consumer, if you felt, this is something I would never buy, well, you need to rethink. If you wouldn't buy your own product, what makes you think anyone else is going to buy what you are unwilling to purchase? And so you got to put it into context of, well, is this exactly what I would want? If I'm spending that kind of money, if I'm actually trying to fill this need, is this going to actually service what I'm asking for? So that's your first litmus test of, would you actually buy your own product? And if not, what would you change or refine so that it actually has what you would see as redeemable? The second thing I'd point out is if you're struggling asking for the money, or asking for full payment or asking for financing terms, ask yourself, would you do those very things yourself? Would you adhere to or assign to those types of terms of conditions? If not, then you need to tweak and kind of change what you're asking is. If you're selling a $3,000 product, are you expecting them to pay in full? Are you expecting them to get a discount if they pay in full? Are you willing to offer them, say, 3 easy payments, 12 monthly payments? I mean, what is it that you're reasonably able to offer? You've got your business side that's saying this is what you can afford to offer as a company, but as an individual, is what you're offering what you'd be willing to do as well? And sometimes I think you need to remove that ego, as you described it, to say, well, who cares whether or not you would do it? This person that you're talking to makes 3 times as much money as you do. They're in far more worse condition than you are, and they need this solution. It's perfect what they need. It's going to change and revolutionize their life. All of a sudden, it is worth what you're asking to them, even though you don't think you'd pay for it. It's all context.
It really is. And when you think about like tax professionals, if I was selling this kind of service and someone said, hey, it's the package for you today, Chandler, is $15,000. And what we're going to do is we're going to reduce your tax liability by XXX%, which is all of a sudden it's a no-brainer for me because it's like, okay, now I hate taxes. There's one thing in the world that scares me, and it's a letter from the IRS. So if that can go away and someone can protect me and shield me from that, I'll pay anything. It doesn't even matter anymore at this point because I have so much pain associated with those 3 letters. That 3-letter agency is such a scary thing to me. To stay in compliance and to do all that. If someone says, hey, it's this much to save you this much, to put you in this place and finally give you peace of mind, I think it puts you in a place to where you're like, you'll pay a lot of money because you're in this massive amount of pain already.
Exactly. So I'm holding in my hand a water bottle. It's a water bottle that literally came from probably Costco or Sam's Club or something to that effect. So it was probably just a few dollars for a case of them, a few dollars again for a case of these water bottles. Well, at this point, I'm thinking this is just cents on the dollar that it's worth. But you put me on a parade route in the middle of the sun, and I'm hot, and I've got some kid pulling down behind them a cooler with these nice ice cold waters. Am I willing to pay maybe $2 for them? I'm up in a hotel room. I've got one of these that's in a fridge in the hotel room. Am I willing to spend $3 on one of these? It's all context. In the store, yeah, I'll spend a few dollars for a case of them, but in the parade route, and it's now an hour into the parade, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't know where to go get a drink. I'm going to spend $2, $3, $4 on this bottle just because I need the refreshing water that it provides. It's all context.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good point. It's like if I'm sitting in the middle of the desert and you're the only water vendor, I will pay you $1,000 for that bottle of water so I can not die in the desert. Or if you look at some of the people who sit there, if you ever walk the Las Vegas Strip, those guys sit there with their little cases of water and you'll pay $1, $2, $3. You'll get in your hotel room and pay $5 for a bottle of water because you're in that different level of context, because you're in that different place to where you have that need. That need is no longer perceived and you don't have all these options. It's right in front of you. And sometimes in those, it's a convenience purchase as well. I know that this will solve my problem right now versus waiting for an eternity to see if I might be able to figure out how to solve this. And that's another thing that really plays well into high ticket services and the high ticket game is if you can solve someone's problem faster than anyone else can, then you put yourself in a place where you can remove perceived pain quickly, and people will do anything to get themselves out of that place of pain.
Yep. Now, back to your example that you gave of tax, I just want to hit on that for a quick moment because of how relevant it is. The listeners here, many of them choose to offer tax services. And the distinction that I'd like to give with your example is there's a difference between tax preparation and tax planning. The preparation, it's basically filling out the forms and filing the return. And that may have a simple rate for the forms that you're completing. But the planning, going to a business owner and being able to, through various legal strategies, find those different, let's say, loopholes or things that they are qualified for that you as the tax preparer know, the business owner doesn't, and you know what needs to be done in order to meet the qualifications to qualify for those tax savings. You can go in and literally save them tens, if not hundreds, if not millions of dollars in tax fees simply because of the knowledge and the planning and the application of these principles in that business before the end of the tax year. Those things have value. So if you can save someone tens, hundreds, millions of dollars, all of a sudden you getting a percent of that because of your knowledge, know-how, and expertise is very reasonable, and they'd be more than happy to pay you for it. So that context is a perfect example of the difference between tax preparation services coupled with tax planning services. So great example there. Now, why is looking for pain such an element of the sales conversation and is an incomplete strategy when you're just looking for the pain?
Yeah, good question. And I think a lot of people simply search for the pain. They're like, find the pain, stick them with the knife, and just make them wiggle and squirm. But the problem is, usually the pain that you find is a perceived pain, and it's not really the real pain. And so what we have to do is we have to search and find what the pain is. We have to dig a little deeper, and we have to find what the underlying mechanism and problem is. Then we need to connect the dots to the past. So we have to establish a pattern of failure and a pattern that's led them to be here today. So we can understand, okay, well, you've been struggling with this for 10 years, or you've overpaid on your taxes every year for the last 12 years, or you've done this every year and you have these trigger points and these mechanisms to where you're consistently in a place where you haven't realized success. And then what it does is it shifts the pain from, I just need this to be done, to, wow, I didn't know the extent of the issue that I was dealing with. Who can solve my problem? And then you're the only one who has that perceived ability to solve it, because you're the only person sitting in front of them and the only person who's actually ever told them this.
Yeah. And it all starts, first of all, with listening. The fact that you were willing to listen with that genuine curiosity to find out what the pain truly is, diagnose it. And one of the things that I think is very important to realize is the pain oftentimes is nothing more than a symptom of something else. So we've got to go a little deeper, understand what's causing the pain. But the thing I would add to this is, beyond pain, it's very important to now identify what the situation, the customer will be like when the pain is removed, how better it will be for them once it's gone. And the way I do it, and we have a sales training which is called Cut to the Chase. We refer to it as pain and paint. It's basically identifying the pain, the roots of it, and then going into paint, which is just adding the letter T to the word pain. And in doing so, we're now going to paint with the customer what is the ideal world going to look like once the pain is removed. So what are you trying to accomplish? And you gave the example of like weight loss. So you're not happy with your way you look, the way you feel, you're overweight, your health is not good, it's causing you health issues. Well, if I was to now work with you in addressing that issue of the pain that you're experiencing because of your poor health, what would it be like for you if you had lost this weight and you were more active and you were able to participate in outside activities and you didn't have these health concerns any longer? What would that feel? What would that look like? How would your life be different? Now I'm not focusing on the pain, I'm focusing on the future. And if I can paint clearly what that next situation could look like, that they can get excited about it, they'll pay a certain amount of money to get from where they are to that point. And this is their picture. This is their goal. This is their objective. I'm not determining what that looks like. They're defining it. So how's that sounding so far as this applies to the pain element?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And this is a technique we call examine the evidence. And what we do is we understand what the past looks like. We understand what the mechanisms of failure to this point are. And then we help them realize humans are creatures of habit. So we go and examine the evidence. What happens if you consistently follow this pathway in the future? Let's map this out. 5 years from now, where are you? And then all of a sudden, okay, well, I'm going to be worse off, obviously. And then, okay, well, what happens if you make this change? What happens if you do this little small tweak? Oh, well, all of a sudden everything changes and it's magical. What happens if you make a huge tweak? Oh, well, then it's dancing unicorns and rainbows. So then you help them see, oh, okay, we went from this place to where I'm going to consistently fail because I've done this over and over and over again, and I'm a human and I'm a creature of habit. That's future number 1 to future number 2 and 3, which are better and awesome futures, and help them recognize how likely it is for them to stay in this place and not do anything versus how likely it could be for them to see the future. And then in doing that, you create a gap. So the gap from the pain and where they are to, wow, the magical unicorns and rainbow concept.
So what you've just talked about is huge, huge. So there's two things. One, I heard you talking about trajectory. If the individual continues on the path that they are on, doing what they're already doing, this is what they have in store for themselves down the line. And this isn't my words. This is the customer sharing. So if you don't change, if you don't do anything different, what do you think is going to come of this? And they start to talk, well, if I don't act now, if things don't change, if I don't pay off this debt, if I don't change my eating styles, whatever, this is what I see as in my future. And you talk about that and they're like, you know what? I hate that. that is ugly. That's not what I want. I need to change the trajectory I'm on. Okay, great. So what do you want to change it to be? Where do you want to head? Where do you want to go? And like you just said, as you change the trajectory and you talk about now the unicorns and the fairies and where the good could be, what the opportunity may be if they just did something different and made a decision today, here's the kicker. This is the kicker. The gap between the two, how different the pain is from the good of the unicorns that you were describing, that determines the worth of the solution. That's how much they're going to be willing to pay for that solution. So if it's, I'm on a trajectory that the pain is going to be this severe versus if I change today with what you're offering and go this direction, that value is determined by the gap between the two. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds perfect because the bigger that gap gets, the more likely it is they're like, I'm screwed. I can't figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And you start to move this into the place to where it's not no longer you selling them, it's them saying, what can I do about it? Because that gap's been created so big to now it's like, wow, I don't want to live in the dirt. I want to be with the sunshine and unicorns, but I don't know how to get there. Look at me. I've been failing for the last 5 years. I haven't had a good planning strategy and nothing's looked okay. And I want to get over here to where I'm no longer overpaying, to where I'm no longer scared of the IRS, to where I no longer get a letter and I'm like, oh my gosh, the heebie-jeebies come all over me. So that way all of a sudden I'm like, okay, what can you do? Like, I'll pay any amount of money to get this problem solved at this point. And I think that's ultimately what we want, because now you have the client going from, yeah, what are you offering? Give me your pitch, to what can you do for me and how can we solve this together? And that's when we can move into what I call becoming a challenging leader. So that's when you say, well, I'm not quite sure if I can 100% help you today yet, but if you're open to it, we can continue talking and working through this to see if it might make sense. I'm on the no. I'm pushing them away. I'm making sure that I never look needy. I'm not like, oh yeah, let's do this right now. No, hold on. Let me think about this.
So I want to talk about that. That's oftentimes referred to in sales as the takeaway. But before we get there, I just wanted to finish this thought about the gap. One of the things that you also mentioned just before you transitioned is the fact that the gap is also consistent of not just the difference between where they could be going and where they should be going, and that's what determines the value of your solution, but it's the fact that what you're offering should be a process, a system that further ensures the success of the new direction and accelerates it. If I'm able to say that by purchasing what we're discussing, I can more ensure, I could accelerate your path towards that new, as you were describing it, the unicorns, then all of a sudden that solution becomes more valuable because the gap is so much wider. The more distinct that gap, the better. But the solution, the fact that you've got a turnkey, a process, and a way that I could just plug into and ensure I'm going to achieve what I'm hoping to and accelerate the likelihood of my getting there, I'm going to pay for that. Now, what you're describing with what I just mentioned as the takeaway is we don't want to come across needy. This isn't about us. This is them. Is that what you want? Do you see that being the solution? Do you see with this program this would work? Do you see what we're discussing that would actually meet your needs? And what we're going to do is just say, if you don't do this, what's the alternative? If you don't act now, what's going to change? Obviously, we've defined where you're headed if you don't change. So is not changing an option? And all of a sudden, you're removing yourself from being the instrument in the decision because you just said it best. This is their choice. There's no pressure here. You get to decide because ultimately you're going to be the one dealing with the consequences of the choice, whether it's action or inaction anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's super important. And you said two really important things here. Number one is if they start asking for the sale, that's not when you jump on them and say, all right, yeah, let's do this. Can I send you an invoice? It's and this goes into another thing you said, which is packaging, having a turnkey solution. Hey, because you said this, we're going to do that. Because you said that, we're going to do this. And it's a package that they can jump on and it's easy for them to understand and they want it. But you say, hey, would that even make sense to you? Does what I just said seem like it might help you? Oh, yeah, I think so. Well, why do you think it would help you though? Do you think you even have the time to make this work right now? Are you sure this is really a situation where you want to take advantage of this? Or, hey, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you're at? Oh, I'm a 9. I'm a hard 9. Wow, that's pretty high. Well, I'm curious, why not like a 2? Why so high? I'm forcing them to sell themselves up versus, oh, wow, a 7, that's high. Let's buy today. And so that puts them in that place where they consistently have to sell themselves to me on why this is important right now and why this is important for them and why this even makes sense for them. Do they have the time? So I'm taking them and I'm challenging them at different intervals to remove the idea and the concept of how I want to think about it and move them into the concept of, wow, I didn't know this was as big of an issue. I've just told myself why I need this 78 times. This guy's kind of a dummy, so I think I'm going to buy from him because he doesn't seem like a big salesman. He seems to know what he's doing, but he's just bumbling around in this sales process. And I think I can trust him. And we're not trying to manipulate people in this process, but we're trying to move them into a place where they drop that sales resistance and they can finally feel like they can trust someone.
That sales resistance that you mentioned, that's where at the beginning I was speaking of, we want this to be a collaborative effort. We want them to feel as if there's this problem that's outside of them or an opportunity that's outside of them, and just the two of us are trying to determine what the best solution is or path to address that problem or opportunity that they're looking at. If we can be a team, we're more likely to achieve it. And the thing that I would add to what you just shared is, as you're trying to let the person feel that this is their choice, recognize if you need the sell more than they need the solution, you've got a problem, because you are going to become pushy. Your body language is going to exhibit anxiety and concern and frustration of, I'm losing the sell. It's slipping away. You need to have a level of indifference to the point that this is their decision. This is in their best interest. They need to decide. They need to own their decision. And if that's the case, I'm just here to help facilitate their path to getting what they need. They've told me what the problem is or what the opportunity is. I'm just trying to provide a pathway to achieve or relieve that. And if they want it, they're going to take it. If it's clear, it makes sense. How's that sounding so far?
Yeah, I think that's perfect, because you have to remove your mindset and the thought of, I'm here to sell someone, to I'm just here to figure out what kind of problems they have, the extent of their problems, and whether or not I can solve that. And then it's my responsibility to be a coach or a good service provider who can challenge them and have hard conversations with them right now. Because if I can't do that, if I'm afraid to ask these questions, if I'm afraid to say, hold on, why do you think you even need this? It's going to be challenging to be a good service provider for them if they do buy. And I think that's a distinction we have to remove. We're not here to necessarily be their friends. We're here to stay in this neutral state. And we're here to stay this modality to where we become the leader that they want to follow. We become the leader that's worth following. And we become the service provider and the person who they start to believe in, who has that know, like, and trust factor, and who has been able to remove fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the equation.
Yeah, the way I would add to that is, we're basically the educator. We have the information. We are the ones that know so much about the solution that's being provided. They need to be comfortable enough to ask us questions where we can provide insights, explanations, clarifications to help them make their decision. So we're just an educator at this point. I just coincidentally have all the answers to the information related to this product or service. Feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to give the information. I don't want to embellish. That's a natural tendency of a salesperson, is to embellish. But the point is I'm just trying to now give them the information so that they can make an informed decision. It just coincidentally is, they're oftentimes choosing between inaction, not doing anything and continuing on the trajectory that they're on, that they obviously don't like, or changing, making a decision, purchasing this product or service, and now changing at this very moment, pivoting to a better direction and trajectory towards the solution that they want, the opportunity or the removing of the challenge. And in that new trajectory, we're going to accelerate their likelihood of achieving it because of what we've put together as a product or a service. So that's kind of a summation of it. How about objections? I'm dealing with somebody, they're intrigued by what we've got, and they're asking questions. What should I think of those?
Yeah, I think when we look at objections, a lot of people think of them as things we solve at the end of the problem or the end of the conversation. It's like, okay, hey, here's what we do. And then you battle objections for 4 hours. And I think for me, what we want to do is remove that concept and say, okay, anything that's an objection at the end, we need to move it to the discovery phase of the conversation, have it early. Because if the objection comes out and we start battling it after we drop the price, now we're just salespeople trying to make the sale. But if we remove that and move that to the discovery phase of the conversation, now we're just a person trying to work through a problem with another person. And so when you think about the common objections, I want to think about it. We solve that by consistently challenging whether or not this makes sense, whether or not it's good right now. Hold on, why would you even want this? On a scale of 1 to 10, why aren't you a 2? So these subtle little challenges are putting them in a place where they have to consistently sell themselves. Think about spouse or business partner. We don't want to put ourselves in a place to where we say, hey, you need your business partner on this thing because I want to take both your money. You want to make sure that you say, hey, does your business partner even know what you're doing right now? No. Well, if they don't know what's going on, how can you possibly be successful? This is a marriage. You can't even begin to fathom making a decision without the other party involved, because what happens is they don't know what's going on. If they're oblivious to the equation, they can't help you. And they might even deter you from being successful, not because they don't want it to be successful, because they don't know what's happening or what's going on. And in order for this to work, you need to be in alignment. You too, your business partner and yourself, and me. We're kind of a trifecta here. And so we kind of handle spouse in that environment, but we move all of this to this discovery phase. Finances. Everybody's afraid to talk about money. Nobody wants to talk about money, but that's usually our own insecurities that we're battling. I can't ask you about money. Well, why can't you? I don't know. It doesn't feel right. And it's because of the way we grew up. Money is evil. Don't talk about money. Don't ask people how much they make it work. But if we want to be able to give someone a specific service, like in the beginning, we were talking about what kind of packages make sense, what kind of payment plans make sense, how can we move this into a place to where it makes sense for most people? We discover that in finances. So we ask them up front, what do you make? What does it look like after taxes? What does it look like at the end of the day? What does your credit situation look like? So that way, when you move into the pitch, you already know what they can and can't afford because you've already discovered that with them. And then it becomes a clear, cohesive, easy pitch.
Yeah, I don't want to overcomplicate what you're sharing here, but I do want to add to it that there are, what I have found in my experience, some very common objections, if we want to use that term, that typically come into play. And it's, first of all, time. There's a time element of implementing, learning, understanding this product or service. If I buy it, that's one thing to give the transaction the money, but now I've got this thing that I've got to learn or implement or understand, and that takes time. Does the customer have the time, if they make the decision to, yes, move forward, to do these things? Are they willing to commit is the second thing. How high on the commitment, how big of a priority is this discussion we're having? If it's just a curiosity thing, their pain, let's say, isn't high enough for them to make a purchase decision. But if I've got the doctor telling me that my health is such that I need to act immediately, or if I just paid taxes last year and I don't want to pay that amount of tax return this year, I've got a pain and I've got to address it. And so where's that commitment? The next is the idea of, like you're saying, the decision maker. Is this something they can make as a decision maker? One thing to add to that is, you were talking about how do you get those decision makers to participate in the conversation. I've always found that if I'm dealing with a decision maker, it's a business owner that has a partner, a spouse, I'm always wanting to say, look, I've got all this information. I'd hate to put you in a position where you had to go back and tell your partner that you were looking at this option and it has this cost, and presume that you're going to do my job, which is answer all of their questions, where I've taken years to learn this product and service. I'm able to answer all these questions rather than just say, I don't know, and just leave this huge decision to a 5-minute conversation on your end. We've already been talking for an hour. I'd be happy to talk to this person rather than you feeling like you're put on the spot and have to explain and justify everything that I've taken years to learn. Let's just have a conversation. I'd be more than happy to help them understand whatever questions they have and basically not put you in an awkward situation of having to explain what I already know. Those types of things have helped in those conversations I've found in the past. So those are, I think, some talking points that we could address right now if we wanted to. Time, money, the partner type thing. But the key takeaway from this is objections, in my opinion, are nothing more than buying signs. The only reason why somebody is objecting is because they're curious enough about purchasing. They're not walking away from the deal. They're not saying no. They're just bringing up questions that if you could actually address and resolve, they're just showing that they're interested in moving down that path still. So I'm more than happy to take an objection. It's kind of like tennis. If I hit the ball over the net and they don't hit it back, that's kind of a boring game. I want them to hit it back. Give me a challenge. Ask me a question.
Yeah, exactly. Put me in this place where we can have a real conversation. I don't want to just talk to myself the whole time. So ask good questions. Let me ask you good questions. Like, I want to do this. Hold on. Are you sure you even have enough time right now? Oh, yeah, plenty of time. Okay, well, talk to me. What does your day look like? Are you, let's kind of work through this. Let's make sure this actually makes sense. Okay, well, I do this and that and blah, blah, blah. Okay, wow, you do have enough time. Okay, we just discovered that and solved that. Or we just have these simple conversations. It doesn't really have to be that. We don't have to be in a battle for it. It doesn't have to be, are you sure you're the kind of person who makes decisions today? Or are you sure you're not being a little weenie and you can't make a decision by yourself without your business partner? We don't have to move people into those environments. We can have really good conversations. And the reason we call one of our concepts the challenging leader concept is because we can ask challenging questions that don't make us come out and be perceived as jerks. We can use, and this is another thing we look at a lot, is our tone. The way our tone comes off is going to be the way our voice is perceived in the conversation. So if we're going to ask a really challenging question, like, are you sure you have enough time? If I ask it this way, hey, are you sure you have enough time? I sound like kind of a jerk, like, wow, this guy's yelling at me. But if I drop my tone a little bit, like, hold on, are you sure you have enough time to really make this work? I drop my tone, I have a little bit of stutter going on. Now I'm less of a threat. And they're willing to answer my questions. And you can basically ask anything if you have the right tone.
So tone and tempo, what could you say about tempo?
I think tempo, what you have to do is recognize a lot of us speak fast, and you have to remove that and slow it down quite a bit in order to speak correctly with another human being. If you have someone, if you're talking to, and they're like a mile a minute, you can speak a little faster with them because they're going to perceive it a lot faster. But I think with most people, our tone needs to be perceived in a way to where it's not a threat. And our tempo needs to be in a way to where it's understandable. So if I'm talking to someone and it's like, hey, hold on, are you sure you really have enough time right now? I drop my tone, my tempo's slow, they can understand it, and then I just stop talking. Silence is a weapon. And so I think if we can adopt that strategy right there, we put ourselves in a place to where we have the intensity there, but we're also approachable. So then people will listen to us. They'll answer our questions. We move into that smart dummy concept. We're less of a threat. Sales resistance drops, and we can ask real and sometimes challenging questions.
Yeah. One of the lessons I learned about tempo that was very helpful, because I speak quickly. For most people, I'm very, very not only intense, but I'm very quick for a lot of people. So what I learned is, in a conversation, if I can speak as quickly as the other person and a little bit faster, then I'm able to retain their attention. Because if I'm speaking too slow, they get bored, their mind will wander, they'll start to actually think about other things. But if I can speak at their speed, their tempo, plus a little bit more, they have to pay attention because they have to actually hear what I'm saying and process it. And so speaking a little quicker than the other individual is a nice little tactic that you can use to keep their attention. And then you're right about the tone. The tone, you want to make it so that it's pleasant, not attacking. And one of the things that you mentioned there that was huge is character. Never attack someone's character. Never put them in a position where they're having to defend themselves. That defensiveness is just a sure thing that they're going to be moved towards walking away from the situation because they're uncomfortable. Sales is an emotional thing. And if you ever put the person into an uncomfortable state, their gut feeling is going to say, walk, this isn't safe. This isn't comfortable. Get out of here. And so you never want to put that person in that position. So that brings me to my next question, which is rapport. How is rapport an important part of the sales process?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think a lot of people see rapport as like the beginning of a conversation. You like answer the call or you're sitting in front of someone. How's the weather today? Oh, hey, John, I noticed you're from Wyoming. I'm also from Wyoming. I like to ride horses. Oh, I noticed you like to ride horses. We are now in rapport. We're best friends. But I think it moves into rapport is achieving the know, like, and trust factor and removing fear, uncertainty, and doubt consistently in the equation of the conversation. And so when I see rapport, I see it as something that you're consistently in throughout the conversation. And if you do something to remove yourself from rapport, that's when you remove yourself from the ability to make the sale. So rapport to me is asking these good questions. It's moving into the pain. It's finding how to connect the dots. It's changing the perceived value of fear, figuring out that gap, and really forcing this person to quantify why they need this, how they need it, why this makes sense. Do they have the time? All of that is moving yourself into leadership rapport. And that's what we need. Because once you build that leadership rapport and once you move yourself into that environment, you're now different than anyone else. You're now someone worth listening to. You're someone worth following. And most importantly, you're someone worth buying from.
Yeah. Yeah. The last question, well, not last, I've got a few more, but real quickly, this idea of questions and listening. I think a salesperson, oftentimes, you mentioned earlier on script, they get this dialogue of what they're going to say about the company, what they're going to say about the product, what, testimonials they may have. They've got this wealth of information that they want to communicate and share, and they don't ask questions, they don't listen, they dominate the conversation. What advice would you have for someone about that?
Yeah, I think if you have that problem, take your script. If it's in Google Docs, put it in the trash can. If it's a real script, just rip it up and throw it away and move to and write down 5 questions you can ask in the conversation. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you're struggling with? What's going on right now? Then your only goal in life at that point is to ask, okay, can ask deeper questions. Why does that make sense? Why is this going on? Why does that make sense? There's a technique called downward arrow where you find the problem or you ask about the problem. Hey, what's your struggle? And then you just ask why 7 times. Just do that and remove the idea that you need to dominate the conversation, that you need to talk a lot, and move yourself into the place to ask strategic questions. Just write on your computer, write on your script, ask strategic questions. And then when you move yourself into that environment, you can now slow down a little bit. You can now recognize that silence is a weapon. I don't need to talk all the time. If I ask someone a really challenging question and they don't respond right away, I don't say anything. I'd let them sit there. I'd let them think about it. I'd let them bask in the pain they're experiencing because they're processing it. If I try to save them, if I try to talk the whole time, if I consistently attack them, they're not going to have the time to process that. And the conversation is not going to be emotional. It's going to be aggressive.
Very good. I'm enjoying this conversation that we're having today. Chandler, one question that I want to end with then is regarding sales. What is the misconception that you find non-salespeople come to the conversation with that you feel would be good to dispel and get rid of?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception around sales is that you have to be aggressive, that you have to be this like used car salesman coming at them. And I can tell you from a good story. I went to buy a car recently and the guy came on the lot. First thing he said to me was, "What can I do to get you to buy today?" And so I think we need to recognize that we don't need to be in that mentality to approach a sales conversation. We can remove that. We can remove the pressure. We can remove the idea of scripts and just enter into the idea of the concept of the level 5 listening. Just ask strategic questions with the purpose and intent to move yourself to a place where you establish a relationship with another human being. Sales is just relationship building.
Yeah, no, this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize what it is I felt that we've covered in this last little bit, and really kind of give some highlights, if I may, and then after that, come back to you, Chandler, for a closing thought to see what more you would like to. You just need to go to the episode description, and in the episode description, Chandler has provided here a 9-step framework to selling without manipulation, aggressive tactics, or feeling salesy. So what you want to do is go to the episode description, and there you'll find a link to actually get this information so that you can apply these things in your business, in the conversations you're having, and improve actually this sales process to become not only more comfortable for yourself, but also those that you're interacting with. In addition to that, there's some information that you'll find there about strategic selling and selling with confidence. The selling with confidence is really built around the idea that you should be comfortable as you're having these conversations. And strategic selling is basically the idea that there is a process, a turnkey system that you can literally apply in your efforts to take the people that you're interacting with and get the engagements that you deserve. So check those out. Go to the episode description and look at those there. The summary I'd like to give of our conversation today is Chandler's wealth of understanding of not just the process of selling, but the intellectual, the neurological, the scientific approach to this. I enjoyed the conversation because it really got down to some of the key elements that I think are essential when selling, if we want to use that word as we are. Because one of the things that I think it really is just asking good questions, being genuinely curious, and at the time of identifying the trajectory that a person's on, clearly identifying in their words what they want to actually be doing and defining that gap as to what the solution will actually achieve. Now, the thing that I would like to just point out here is when we're dealing with our customers, our potential customers, it's really defining, is there a pain that we're trying to help them avoid, or is there an opportunity we're helping them achieve by working together? And if we can define it as either avoiding a pain or achieving that opportunity that they're defining, That's what we're trying to do, is actually be that accelerant to help them achieve that peace of mind that they're looking for, and in the end, be happy. And so I really do like this conversation. We talked about timing, tempo, tone as to the conversations we're having. We addressed rapport building as to what that is. It's not just something at the beginning, it's throughout the entirety of the conversation. We talked about overcoming objections, things that we need to be paying attention to so that we're not actually challenging someone's character. A lot of great highlights and takeaways from today's conversation that I'm really grateful for and thank Chandler for. So Chandler, do you have a final word, a closing thought you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is we're always afraid to fail in our processes. We're always worried about what people will say, what's going to happen, and all the bad things. But I think we have to recognize that failure creates the opportunity for success. And had I not been in a position to where I went almost 0 for 14 on my first few dozen sales calls, I wouldn't have moved into this position where I got obsessive and created this process. And so I look at the idea of failing in my sales, failing in my conversations, failing in my business as the opportunity to recognize what went wrong, change it, and become masterful in the way I operate.
Very good. Well, Chandler, thank you for being on the show today. This has been a great conversation. As a reminder to our listeners, definitely, if you've not yet subscribed, do so. Listen to this on the platform you'd prefer and check out our episodes that come out each and every week where we have experts on the show to help us address things that range from marketing and selling to grow the firm and get the clients we deserve, to offering quality services and making sure that you're actually getting paid what you're worth, to even the production side, working efficiently and productively to ensure that you're actually doing the work in a timely manner and being profitable as you go about doing it. We're talking about onboarding clients. We're talking about retaining clients, training staff. So listen and join us each and every week for those discussions. As for the information you've heard in this episode or others, if you'd like to apply them in your business, please reach out to us at universalaccounting.com or give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day.